Hi, welcome to the RTSleepWorld podcast. I'm Michael DiDomenico. Today, our guest is Senior Director of Marketing for Sleep and Respiratory Care, Jim Doty from Philips Respironics. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Michael. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here, and especially at a time where you guys have just released the Respironics Full Face mask, which is really a revolutionary design. I wonder if you could tell us about how that came to be and how you addressed the what used to be a very big full face mask people associated with sort of like a gas mask look, but Respironics has really changed the face of CPAP interfaces. Can you tell us how this came to be?
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. The design really started a few years ago as Philips began to shift our focus from shift our focus to being a patient-centric one and really looking at what patient needs were as they were using our products. And historically, we've worked with respiratory therapists and other people who are very familiar with the needs of these patients. But we really started a few years ago just going right to the patient, and you start to see that those design elements surface in the last rounds of products we've introduced, including the Dream Station. We interviewed hundreds of patients related to what they wanted in the design of a CPAP machine itself. We carried that same thinking into our mask design, and when we started talking to patients who use full face masks, their feedback was universal, and it was in the sense that they weren't fully happy, and it was also consistent in that they had some very specific issues with full face masks as you described them. And a couple of those were red marks on the top of the nose, and that generated tenderness. So you wake up in the morning and you wear a little badge across the top of your nose that shows everyone you've been using a CPAP mask all night. And if it wasn't sore, it was certainly unsightly. And then the other element was field of view, where there was a feeling of claustrophobia that you put the mask on and you disappeared behind it. And so when we started talking to patients about what they needed in a mask, they said, we really want that to change. That those are the elements that keep us from using therapy successfully and continuing to use a full face mask. So the engineers set out to do that, and I think we succeeded. If you look at the mask, it fits underneath the nose. It seals under the nose in ways that I think are unique. We actually, as part of our patient-centric design elements, incorporate 3D imaging. So we have literally tens of thousands of patient scans of all ethnicities, all ages, both sexes. It is a database that's enormous that has basically cataloged patient faces and the topography, if you will, of a face, and we were able to then design these cushions that then fit virtually any and all faces. So that's really how it came about, Michael, was patients telling us what it is they wanted in a mask and what would appeal to them, and our engineers being able to deliver that.
People talk about full face mask, or they think they're going in for a sleep study, and they're thinking, oh no, I'm going to need a full face mask. I know it. I'm a mouth breather, even if they really aren't a mouth breather. And a lot of people are very apprehensive about that because there's so many great new masks on the market, like the other parts of DreamWear, where you can either use the under the nose piece or the nasal pillows. But for those that must have the full face mask, this really is a revolutionary design.
It is, Michael, and I'm really glad you mentioned the sleep lab, because that's one of the areas where we see this mask being adopted first. And it's interesting in that oftentimes, as you know, your audience is sleep technicians and respiratory therapists, oftentimes working in labs. To get that one single night titration study, in many cases, it's easier and necessary to just use a full face mask. And to your point, that oftentimes puts people in a mindset that the mask that they're going to have to use is big, unwieldy, perhaps claustrophobic,
Right.
and not comfortable all the time. And what we found with the Dream family of masks is that, as you mentioned earlier, the actual frame is universal. So if you're using a pillow mask, an under-the-nose mask, or a full face, you would actually, once you fit the frame, then the frame is universal for each of those mask types. And what we find is that sleep labs are beginning to start to use the Dream family of masks as exactly that, as a foundational mask. They can actually start with an under-the-nose configuration, and if in fact they find that the patient is a mouth breather or requires a full face mask, they can simply exchange the cushion, and in the case of the full face, add a bit more headgear, and then they can just resume the study again. So there's an efficiency factor as well for the respiratory therapist to be able to use the mask in titration, or the mask family in titration, and really give the patient exactly what they need. And what we're also starting to hear is that those patients then are having a great titration experience where they don't have the same issues that we talked about earlier.
Is there a benefit for the DME regarding the frame? And from a stocking standpoint, is there any benefit there as far as cutting down on the number of things they need to stock when they are sort of interchanging those different end pieces, if you will, the actual interface part?
You know, there are fewer pieces, so yes, that's a benefit, and so we do see DMEs who are essentially stocking for example, an under-the-nose mask, but then they'll also have pillow cushions available. So again, if a patient starts on one type of mask and need to be switched out for any reason, or they would like to try a different style of mask, again, the level of education required is minimal, because all the patient has to do is exchange the cushion. Everything else fits the same, and they can just continue use of the mask with the new cushion type to see if that actually meets all their needs.
That's a really smart system. Now, you guys kicked this off at MedTrade about a month ago. What's happened since then? How was the response there?
We're seeing just a wonderful response to the market. This mask is resonating with the respiratory therapists who are fitting masks. We're seeing a real, just a great response, Michael. It's clear, as I said, that sleep labs are finding that they can, it gives them flexibility and it makes them more efficient. And frankly, DMEs, as I was just describing, are also experiencing some of that same benefit with patients who, post initial education, find that they do want to change or try a new mask type. And in fact, being able just to provide the cushions is really being accepted. That, in addition to the fact that, you know, patients tell us that this mask is as close as you can get to wearing nothing. And so you understand how important that is to a CPAP user. Just the light feel on people's face and the open field of view, really important, and patients are responding.
And I think that was another problem with full face masks in the past, before you guys changed all that, is there was a lot of hard plastic, some metal involved, holding things together in some cases, and that's all gone.
It is. That's right. You'll remember the days when there were big pieces on your forehead that had to hold things stable, and you know, those elements are just are gone. You know, the other element that I think gets lost in the DreamWear mask is that we've attached the hose at the top of the head,
mm-hmm.
and that eliminates the torque on the front of your mask, and so that you basically eliminate the mask wanting to move side to side. So the mask is incredibly stable. That, coupled with the fact that a patient without the front of the face nose hose attachment can actually sleep on their side or with their face in the pillow. Mm-hmm. It's life changing for some people who really do want to sleep on their side, but have been prescribed CPAP.
So for those of our listeners that haven't seen this mask yet, what's the best way for them to see it and get a demo? And I assume Philips will be at the upcoming APSS Sleep 2018 meeting in Baltimore.
We will indeed. We'll be there. We'll be fitting the mask in the booth there and at the Sleep Technologist Show in Indianapolis. So both those shows will be there. We'll be fitting the mask. If you want to see it in the meantime, please just contact your local Philips Respironics representative. They'll be happy to come in and show you the mask and do a breathing demo and show you just how well it would seal on your face as well as your patients.
Jim, I want to thank you for being with us and telling us more about the DreamWear Full Face Mask.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it.